Grandparents, where were they from and why did they come to Vandalia or Butler Township? Do you know this?
Well, they were from Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Yes, and let's see, there was another family had come here the year before the Cougars came. That was the reason they came.
Uh-huh.
And,
Do you know what their name was? Do you remember?
well, the man's name was David. What was his last name? Well, it'll come to me sometime. I don't want it.
Yeah.
And also, what were their occupations?
They were farmers.
All
Well, there was a wagon maker
in the family.
the little crook in Dogleg down in Spankertown there. That went around the old wagon maker's shop. They
I see.
didn't make the wagon maker move.
Yeah.
When and where were you born and where did you live? In other words, give a description of
on,
these
on this farm. I was
on the south, on Kirsten Road where the
Yes,
original buildings were.
the road, and it makes me kind of peeved that they changed the name of that road. That should be the Cougar Mill Road. Why didn't they leave it that way?
Well, politics.
That's right. That's the answer.
That's the answer to that one. Can you tell what it was like when you was growing up and living here in the Butler Township area?
Well, I know I had to walk to school a mile and a half
Where did you go to school?
over on the corner of Peters Pike and
What was the name of that one?
Election School.
Election School.
That's where
Okay.
they held the elections.
That's part of the corner of Lawrence Keel's farm now. Peters Pike and Stone Quarry.
Okay. Yeah.
And the only thing that's left of that is the well.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
What do you remember? What did you study? Any particular? In other words, when you got up in later years in school, what was your?
well, it was reading, writing, and arithmetic.
You went to school there at Election School, and also you went to school there at the high school there at
Peters Pike.
Peters Pike and Route 40. You also went to what college did you go to? Up
Otterbein,
Otterbein.
Westerville.
Yeah, in Westerville. Transportation, what do you first recall other than walking? Do you remember
Oh, the horse and buggy are usually horse and spring wagon.
see you didn't give your birth date.
August 24th, 1884.
1884. Okay, that was on question 2. We got ahead of ourselves there.
Well, that's okay.
You remember the first automobiles?
Oh, yes, 1913 was our first one.
1913. What kind was that?
Oh, Ford.
An old Ford. Was that a touring car or?
Oh, yes, touring car.
Yeah. And do you remember anything about the first airport that we had over here when they started?
Well, yes, that was all farmland when I was
Mm-hmm.
growing up. And Oh, when that first plane was over here, when we'd hear that, everybody got out so they could
Got out and watched it, huh? You remember anything about the old traction line or canals that went
Well,
down?
the old traction line, I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
I rode on that.
Well, see, I think, John, the canals probably had passed.
Yeah, that's right.
They were not in
Mhm.
use. But
Right.
they were.
It's still there, though.
Still there.
Uh-huh.
You can still see a few remnants of them down here.
When was do you remember when the first railroad went up through there?
No, I don't.
You don't know what date at all?
No.
Uh-huh. That was after the canals ceased to be used. Well, it had to have been initiated along about that time, or they wouldn't have stopped the canal.
Yeah, that's what killed the canals.
Yeah.
Was
The railroad. Mm-hmm.
Bill Patty down here told me the other day, I was talking to him, got a tape on him, and he was saying that he remembered that when the old traction line, just before it quit, the last thing it was hauling was freight. It wasn't hauling passengers.
Oh.
And it went over the the railroad bridge down on the Miami River into Dayton, and the bridge collapsed, and that was the end of the traction line. That was Bill's.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's what Bill told me.
Uh-huh.
Well, see, they had a traction going up through Vandalia, and they had one going through Englewood. Of course, that used to be called Harrisburg.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What's that, John?
They had traction line in Vandalia going north and south. They had one in Englewood, but that used to be called Harrisburg, didn't it?
Yes, Harrisburg. Englewood used to be Harrisburg. And there's another Harrisburg in Ohio. So one or the other had to change its name, and it seems like we were the one that had to do the changing.
I see.
Probably settled after the other one was, probably the reason for it.
I don't know.
Uh,
The CH&D Railroad went up through Englewood, north, south.
yeah, I guess that's right. It did.
Mabel, could you tell me where Rocky Springs Church was? Now, I know this is not in Butler Township. It's across on the other side of the Stillwater River somewhere, but I've been reading about that. It was where the United Brethren started a church.
Rocky Spring?
Yeah. Do you remember anything about Rocky Springs? A church?
Well, that's where the United Brethren Church
I believe either that or Quakers. I don't know which. It was one of
must
them.
have been Quakers.
Well, the United Brethren Church there in Vandalia is about the oldest one
I
in the
think so.
area, I think.
Yeah, they're celebrating their 150th this year.
Uh-huh. What forms of entertainment did you have available when you was a young child and teenager, young adult?
Oh, we had spelling matches.
Spelling matches.
See who was the better speller. And, well, then we had parties, ice cream parties and popcorn parties and anything that you could get to entertain people, get them together.
They didn't have any movie houses or anything,
No,
not until in later years. What kind of communication do you remember? Do you remember when you got the first telephone or anything?
oh my, yes. I'm scared to talk over it.
You have any idea of what year that was? Was it at your parents' home, or was
Yes, it was the early 1900s, I think.
it early 1900s? Might tell Phil what happened to the original house down there during the, let's see, that burned in what year? 1913.
13.
That was the year I was born.
Yeah.
And
Last thing that came out of the house
well, good.
was John's bottle. They'd had everything out they thought was safe, and Mr. Miller, who was a neighbor, spied John's bottle on the mantel. And he said, well, that child can't do without that. And he went in the house and got it.
Well, what caused the fires? You remember?
They never did really know.
Wasn't it the old acetylene plant that exploded?
Oh, yeah, that was...
For lighting, they had an old acetylene plant in there.
That exploded after the fire was started. They didn't really know what started the fire in the first place.
Well, you built this house in 1911.
Yes.
And you put piping throughout for acetylene lighting, but they never hooked it up after that happened. So,
Yeah, it wouldn't be too good an experience to acetylene. I don't think I'd want it if I just lost the house from that.
what year did Dad put the electricity in here? He did that right at the beginning, didn't he? Right when they built the house? Because all knob and tube, and they had the old Fairbanks Morris light plant out there in the little summer house. So you'd had to wired it at the time you built it in 1911, right?
I suppose.
And we put the plumbing in and everything at that time too. Had
that would have been pretty early for inside plumbing.
Yeah, yes it was. But it had to have been done all at that time. What kind of businesses do you remember was the earliest business in Vandalia or Butler Township? Do you remember that? Like,
well, the store in Vandalia, the Rankin Store, was the first one I remember there.
General merchandise, wasn't it? Or
yes.
And farm machinery, wasn't it?
Yes, farm machinery. Too.
Did that stand on the northwest corner of the crossroads of 25 and National, or was it located?
Yes.
That's I've been told that was the building the first and oldest building in Vandalia, and it's where Benjamin Wilhelm, who laid out the city, built his first store, and he was the first merchant in that store. Now you say Rankin, so
yes, Rankin is the first one I remember.
Yeah, so we're probably talking about well, you said 1880.
84 she was born.
You were born, so maybe we're talking before the turn of the century then. Maybe 18.
Oh yes, I think so.
1890, or you were maybe 10 years old by the time you remembered that. So that's Rankin. That's okay. That's one I hadn't heard.
Yes, Ed Rankin.
Okay.
That'd be on the same corner that didn't they have a grocery there in later years, or was the grocery over in the opposite?
Yes, the grocery was over in the opposite corner. The Oddfellows built the house or the building there
be the northeast corner.
Yes.
Did they have any coopersmiths that make barrels here in the township? Do you know?
I think they did, and I think that was down near Merlin Heights.
Weren't there some colored people in that area too that lived
Merlin Heights?
In Merlin Heights, years.
A colored family.
let me ask her something that I hear that's a legend. Do you recall, you're familiar where the Ridenour property is? I don't know whose it was.
Yes.
Okay. At I-70 and Brown School Road, on the north side, they tore that house down when they built the Montgomery County Park in there.
Yeah.
And they took that property over. There's a younger man here in Butler Township who kids me quite a bit, and his name's Bruce Bodecker.
Name's what?
Bruce Bodecker.
Know him well.
John knows it. Well,
Mm.
he's probably what? Do you think Bruce is pushing 50?
Oh, yeah, I would
Pushing
say.
60.
Oh, is he?
Close to it, probably.
But anyhow, he tells me that the Ridenour house at one time was a Negro orphanage.
He's right.
All right? The other story that he tells me is that there was one little Negro boy one night that got mad at the rest of them about something. And he proceeded to crawl up the 2 flights of stairs and went to the attic. And the attic had a latch on it where you could get into the attic, but as soon as you shut the door, it would slam down and lock and you couldn't get out.
Couldn't get out.
Mhm.
And Bruce says that they didn't worry too much about him. You know, he was just probably a runaway.
Hmm.
But a few weeks later, they found him.
Well,
He had starved to death up there. He
Oh,
couldn't get
yeah?
out, and nobody had hurt him.
Well, for goodness sake.
Now that's the story. Now, did you ever hear it?
No, I never heard that.
Okay, see, so I can't verify that.
Olive Ridenour was an Ekman, and Ekman's bought that. Who's originally built that house when Ekman's bought that in later years? You remember?
Well, it'll come to me when I don't want it. I can't think
Ekman's
of it
lived
right
on the Boy Scout, right?
Cricket Hollow, yeah.
Yeah, Cricket Hollow.
Okay, what I was wondering was whether or not that house there on 70 that Ridenours live in could have been one of John Sunderland's relatives. There was a David and another, I forget what the other Sunderland's name was, who homesteaded, or not homesteaded, but entered into 700 and some acres of land, and it goes all the way along the Miami River from, well, I would say probably 70, or maybe even south of 70, on north to Old Springfield Road. It was all that area, the bottom land and everything down there, where Sunderland's
Yeah.
Falls is.
Uh-huh. Well, I know that Sunderland's owned a lot of land. I couldn't tell you just right where it is.
Because I read a book that John gave me that was something about the Brentlinger family, and it stated that, well, I can't remember now whether it was a Brentlinger or a Sunderland that went out and built that house, because he described how I think he called it Grandview was the name of the house, and he could sit out in front of it and look down and see the Miami River, and look down and see where Poplar Creek ran into the Miami River.
Well,
Hmm.
So I thought maybe you might have heard something. Of course, that's the other side of the township, and that was a long way when you were a little girl, wasn't it?
yes, it was.
You didn't get over that way very often.
What about Catherine?
No, but the farthest way you got from home was Vandalia, and once in a while you got to Dayton.
A couple of times a year, maybe?
Oh, oftener than that,
Did
I
you?
think. I
Well-
don't know exactly when my father and mother had the butter and egg route in Dayton. Butter and egg, chickens.
I read something about that somewhere.
Yeah,
Every day. They went in there every day and peddled eggs, if the story is
well, now
true.
they did after the flood.
Oh,
They
okay.
took things in, they went down soon as they get in after the flood, and people had been taking butter and eggs and chickens too, they didn't have anything to eat, so they wanted, Mother packed the lunch and took it along, but we didn't get to eat it. we gave it to the people. Yeah. And then,
There were a lot of blacksmiths around the area. The one there at Spankertown, do you remember where any of the others were?
no, I don't.
There's one in Vandalia, I think.
Yeah, there was one in Vandalia, and Merlin Heights had one. And I know,
The village of Little York had one.
yeah, Little York had one.
I think of Brusman, if I remember right, in some of my research, I ran across the name Brusman. Back in the early days, was a blacksmith in the
George
village.
Fair had the grocery in Little York.
Now that would be
Who?
Fair?
Fair.
Fair.
Uh-huh. Very friendly man.
Do you know whether there was any bootmakers in the township?
Well, I know there is a man, I suppose he's a bootmaker, who could always repair your boots and shoes.
Where was he located?
He was in Vandalia.
In Vandalia. Were there any people that made hats? Any hatters?
I don't think so.
Saddle and harness makers?
Yeah, there was a harness maker. Where did he live? I believe Merlin Heights.
Do you remember when they had the first bank? We talked about grocery stores before, but you remember any of the early banks and where they were located?
Well, there was one in Vandalia.
Vandalia State Bank.
Yeah.
And I guess it was located east of Brusman's cafeteria in the later years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was the first bank, I understand. And I believe John Kleppinger had something he was a director of it.
John Kleppinger? Oh, yes, he was a very prominent man at that time.
And then they built the new Vandalia State Bank east of the St. David's Church.
Yes.
Okay. And then they were bought out by, was it Third National?
Third National,
Which
yeah.
became the Society Bank. Okay, we
Yeah.
pretty well took care
Yeah.
of that now.
Uh-huh.
All right.
They, you was talking about Bruce Bodeker a while ago. Do you ever know Calvin Carnes?
I know Calvin, yeah.
You know Calvin?
Yes.
Well, his mother was my dad's sister.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Sure enough.
We're going to have to get a copy of your genealogy.
Not,
His grandmother.
oh, grandmother.
Okay, we're going to have
Now, wait a
to.
minute.
Oh,
Wait a minute. Helen?
Calvin's father was Lawrence.
Oh, yeah, Calvin. Calvin's father was Lorne Carnes, and his wife was Lova Kleppinger. That's the connection there.
Okay.
John Kleppinger's daughter.
Yeah, John Kleppinger's daughter.
Okay.
And that's where the Kleppingers come in.
Well, we
Yeah.
just got John and Carolyn to join the society this
Yeah.
year, and we got the Runyon girl down here on Kirshner Road that lives on the just west of where the creek goes, up on the left-hand side as you're going west. That house is all painted yellow now, and they're really fixing it up.
Yeah.
Frank Woolery's house.
Oh, the old Woolworth's house, yeah.
I don't know. I'm a
Yeah.
new kid on the block. You know, I mean, I come in here from Indiana in about 1955, so I'm a new kid in the block.
Mother, do you know where he came from in Indiana?
No?
You remember where we go out to the smorgasbord?
Yes?
That's it, that town.
That's my
Oh, for
hometown.
goodness sakes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Have you gotten to the mill?
Well, you wasn't very far over in
Better
Indiana.
keep moving on that.
No, only about 39 miles.
Do you remember who the first doctors were in the area?
Dr. Corbin,
Dr. Corbin. Where was he at? In
Vandalia.
Vandalia? How about dentists?
Well, there was a dentist in Union,
In Union. Remember his name?
Sheets.
Sheets.
I don't remember his given name.
How about attorneys? Were there any attorneys back then?
Yes, there's one that thought he was. I don't know whether he was or not.
Don't remember his name.
Russman, I believe.
Was that in Vandalia?
Is what?
Was that in Vandalia, located in Vandalia? Or?
No, he's near Pope Church.
Oh,
Well, well, we've covered all the where these businesses was located and presently located, and the churches. You say the first UB church was there in Vandalia. Do you remember when the Lutheran church was back here in the on the old mud road here in the farm?
Well, no, but I do remember when you could tell where the building had been.
Mhm.
That there was bricks
That was 18,
laying around.
according to the date on the church down there. They moved it down here in 1871.
1871.
Yeah, so it had to be before that date over there. What year did they start the Pope Church? Was that about the same time?
Well, when President Polk was president of the United States,
President Polk. I'm not that good on my history, are you?
they,
not
Phil.
so bad.
they,
But we can find out.
Yeah.
when they finished the building, the way they got the way it got its name, the fellow that was working on the roof got a nice big bunch of pokeberries and fastened it up on the roof. And that's where it got its name,
Oh.
Pope Church.
You remember any of the early government and law enforcement in the Vandalia or the Butler Township?
Yes. Let's see. Can't think of his name right now.
Was he a justice of the peace or was he a sheriff?
I think justice of the peace.
Okay.
Well, what was Squire Kerr? He was a squire, wasn't he?
That's right.
And then there was a Borchers. I remember that. Remember talking about it. I don't
Yeah.
remember of it.
But what time are we talking about now?
Well, Charlie Borchers was just a little older than I am. So it was back in the 1870s.
Okay.
They were talking about.
That's the Borchers family that the one that lives in Tip. That's got that construction. What's his name, Mary?
Borchers
Nelson
and Tip.
Borchers?
Huh?
Nelson?
Nelson Borchers.
Yes, that's right.
He was a descendant from that Borchers family.
Yeah, I thought he was.
In other words, that was right in there, close to where the Helke farm,
Yes.
wasn't it? wasn't the same buildings, was it?
No, I don't think so.
No.
No, if you're talking about where Borchers lived, that house still stood in 55 because remember Colburn Road used to run off of Peters Road and zigzagged and come over
It's
to
not the
Dog
same
Lake.
Borchers family.
It isn't?
Uh-uh.
Well, Nelson lived there in that house when I came to Vandalia. I don't know whose house it was.
You're talking about the first farm north of Route 40 on Peters Pike, and the building was on the east side.
No.
Leibig.
It seemed to me that they were on the north side of Colburn Road. That went from Peters to Dog Leg. And then when they built the airport, they tore all that down.
Yeah.
They put in the long runway.
Yeah.
Because see, I was scoutmaster in 57, and that was still standing. That road was still used. Peters Pike hadn't been cut off, and neither
Yeah.
had Dog Leg.
Because they didn't have that other runway.
And Howard Beale
Remember him?
had a body
Garage.
shop up there,
Body shop and garage, like,
and we used to camp in his woods
yeah.
behind. And that's how I knew, because one of the guys that helped me in scouting lived on Colburn Road, and you had to go by the Borchers house to get over to a little house where he lived, on closer to Dog Leg. So I thought that was the Borchers farm. I don't know. See,
Wasn't there a Borchers family on Helke Road? Or am I thinking wrong?
Okay.
Yeah, right close to where old Chris Helke lived.
well, that was Carl's dad. That was Carl Helke's dad.
It was Carl's.
Christopher Helke.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a old barn down there.
There was
Halfway
another.
between Vandalia, between National Road, well, it was about 2/3 of the way from National Road to Stone Quarry. On the west side, there used to be, when I came to town, that was there.
Yeah. I thought that there was a Borchers family right along in there too.
May have been, I don't know about that.
I'm not positive, but I think that was right.
Well, there's two Borchers families.
Yeah, the Nelsie.
Lou Borchers was just north of where our old schoolhouse stood. Just a little ways north of that. And then Fred Borchers was on farther north and way back off the road. Pretty long lane to get back to those buildings.
So that would be airport property now? Do you think that would be airport property now, where that was
I
located?
think so, it is.
Okay.
Well, see, Harry and Carl and Paul, that was from one of the Borchers family, and the Nelson, and there was a girl or two, I think, out of the other Borchers family. And I don't think they were close, they weren't closely related, were they? Or were they the original descendants' brothers?
Yes, Lou Borchers and Fred were brothers.
Oh, they were brothers?
Yeah.
Okay. That's about like the Jackson family or the Waymire family. There's
Yes,
a
it is.
lot of them. Oh, shoot. On music and songs or dances, what was popular when you were a young adult? You remember any?
Well, they had the square dances.
You had a lot of square dances.
Uh-huh.
They have a lot of get-togethers that they just sang songs or anything?
Yeah.
Mhm. Did they do that mostly with the church activities?
No. I don't believe with the church. In those days, the churches were very strict what went on
Mm-hmm.
in their buildings.
How much younger is Phoebe Lodge than what you are, that used to live across the road here?
About 2 or 3 years.
Oh, is that all?
Uh-huh.
And then she's living in a nursing home up in Covington.
Yeah.
You used to visit her when she lived with a daughter on Route 55.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, because we
And I've been
took her
up
up
to
there
this
many
now.
times.
I've been up to this nursing home
Have you?
where she is too.
Mm-hmm.
Would you by any chance know who owns the property now across the street from you? This big brick house across the street, would you know their names?
Where?
Right here.
Right across the,
Oh, right across. Who owns it now?
yeah, do you know?
Paul Anderson.
Paul Anderson.
Yeah, he bought that. Yeah.
You give me a nice little bit of information there because we have to run down the name of the present owners of all these old houses that I'm taking
Oh.
pictures of, and I'll show you some after that. And they can take the latest property owner's name, go down to the courthouse, and they put it in computers, and it'll automatically give you the title all the way back for 41 years.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, you start digging. You start going through them big volumes of recorders books, trying to find out who originally owned it.
Louis Schwartz owned it before
well,
they.
now Paul Anderson hasn't owned it too.
No, not too many years. Louis Schwartz used to own that and lived there.
Yes.
And after the garage burned, he rebuilt it in a brick garage. Then he was transferred someplace in Texas, wasn't he? Louis was? His job. He worked for Standard Oil. I think it was Standard Oil.
His father worked for Standard Oil.
Yeah, his father worked for Standard Oil, and I think he did too. That's would be Louis' father was a brother of Howard Longstreet, Minnie Longstreet, Minnie Wolf. Used to go
Remember,
down to our church. lived in
remember,
Florida.
John, I'm a new kid on the block.
Well, that isn't that far back.
He doesn't remember that you don't know all these people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you remember the year that, I don't know where the picture is of that meeting that they had down at the,
There in that basket, the pictures are from that.
Oh, the meeting of the farmers down at your
where the
mother's
governor
dad's.
of,
The governor from the, where it came from.
what state was he from?
Underneath. John,
Alabama.
Oh, underneath.
Alabama or Georgia,
in
wasn't
that
he?
basket.
Georgia, I think.
Yeah, I read about that.
Did you?
Yeah.
Isn't there a basket with
No.
pictures in?
No basket, Mother.
Well-
Where is it?
John, let's
Stay on the subject there.
let's
Here's her last car, Phil, that she drove. We bought it brand new as a Ford Falcon.
yeah, dark blue.
What?
Your last automobile was a Ford Falcon, dark blue, that you drove.
Oh, yes.
There's Mother and Dad's picture.
Oh yeah. Man, he was a handsome fella.
He was.
And you were a pretty cute thing too.
Oh, no. I don't know about that.
There's the house down there that burned.
Oh, okay. Well, this one looks similar to that house.
Well, it's got big windows.
There's my graduation picture, Phil.
I hope you're not taping that, are you?
Yeah, we're taking all that.
Yes, indeed.
I'll
I'll
edit it. I'll edit it.
Keep him on the subject.
Well-
Have you got about the mills, the flour mill? and all
No, I really don't. We haven't talked much about the mill. Let's see how we're doing here. We don't have too much time on this side of the tape. And believe it or not, we've almost spent 45 minutes. So,
I don't see that picture I wanted to show you of the of that gathering down there.
tell me what you remember about the old water-powered mills. I don't care whether it was a grist mill, a sawmill, or anything, but would
Well,
you?
the old cooler mill stood down there where Kirshner's live now.
Okay.
That was a sawmill and grist mill. Let's see, I guess that's all.
Now that was on the east side of the little creek down there, up on the hill,
Yeah,
where there's a red barn on the south side, and I believe a white house or a house is on the north side. And there's
Yeah.
still some evidences of the old mill wheel where it's fell down in there
Oh, is there?
and yeah, it looks like this kind of a wad of old rotted wood.
Well,
But I understood there was a mill right there that you could see from the road, and then up behind the house was another mill.
yes, there was,
2 mills on that
along
property.
that creek, there was about 4 mills.
All right. Now, how about if we go down there to where the original 2 mills you started talking about are, and we start up the hill, and there's a square frame house that has a widow's walk up on top, you know, a flat roof.
Yeah,
I'm told that down to the northeast of that, there was an old mill that stood between that house and a red barn, and it was a sawmill. And they tell me that that has now been made into apartments.
oh,
So do you know whether a sawmill did stand there, and who might have
I
owned it?
think it did, yes.
That's on Bess Boer's farm. That's Bess Boer's
Oh,
house he's talking about. I didn't recall that there was ever any.
oh, yes, the widow's walk.
Mhm. I just wondered if you remembered whether that was actually a mill down there between the house and the barn.
Well, where was
I
the
don't remember
whiskey
that.
distillery at?
Hmm?
Where was the distillery at that made whiskey or beer or something along that creek?
That was on my father's farm.
Then that was north of the sawmill of Kirshner's, north up in there.
Mhm.
Was there ever a mill on the Mask property?
No, I don't think so. The Mats wasn't very well off. They didn't.
Well, then that would exclude what you're talking about then.
Okay.
Well, then when you went south on the creek, then from Kirshner Road south, where was the next mill?
Down on Frederick.
Down on,
Just right at the crossing where the creek crossed Frederick's right there.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and what was that, a flour mill?
I think the sawmill and flour mill, and about anything a mill would make.
Okay. How about the, do you remember the old Iron Eagle Bridge that crossed?
Yes,
Was it there as long as you can remember?
yes, it went down the 1913 flood.
Okay, and it was supposed to have been named after a female bald eagle that came back there to build her
Yes,
nest.
every year.
Every year she turned, okay, all right. These are the things that I like to confirm. I read this stuff and, I wonder.
Is that what my father used to call the old Eagle Ford Bridge?
Yes.
He used to ford that to get to Dayton.
Ford Bridge, before there was any bridge there.
On what's now Philadelphia Drive.
Yeah, why they just drove across the river. It wasn't very deep there.
Had to ford the river to get on down.
Well, Phil, I remember hauling milk down to Finch Jersey Farm. That's on Dogleg. You know the bridge is now. It's got a bend and goes across. Well, it used to go right straight across on an old covered bridge, and then a right 90-degree bend, and then all those farm buildings right there was
okay.
Finch Jersey Farm.
Over down.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course that's out of the township.
Yeah, that
But,
was on the other side of the road. But
Yeah, I heard that the Eagle Ford Bridge, or whatever it is, was the last one built on the Stillwater in Butler Township. The last one back in, first they think they forded the Stillwater from Randolph Township over into Little York, which was Randolph Township until about 1830 or 40. And then they combined Randolph and Wayne Township to make Butler. So anyhow, Little York was founded in 1816 before anything else. before it was even Butler Township. But they're telling me that that was the first bridge was probably at Little York. The second one was up at Harrisburg or Englewood. And then,
Yes, that was an old wooden bridge.
okay, and then they went downriver and they finally, that was the last one they built in Butler Township, was at the Eagle Iron Bridge. That's what I read, what I've been told. I don't know, you know.
What bridge?
I'm wanting you to confirm a lot of this stuff. That's why I asked you if that was a mill down there
Oh, there,
where,
Tadmore.
on
Well,
First
that's
Street.
mine.
Well, she probably doesn't know too much about the eastern part. I've read that there was a sawmill at the mouth of Poplar Creek and the Mine River. You have any recollection?
Creek.